Hi, everybody. Welcome. Welcome to this beautiful education series. I'm Karen Palmer. I'm known as Miss Kindness and Mindful Media Mom on all social media. And this is a time for us to really celebrate the people who are out in the world who are helping to have an education transformation to a culture of peace. A very exciting series that we have here, and I get to bring you some of the most incredible people who are doing beautiful, beautiful work out in the world. Today I get to interview Alexander Laszlo, who is going to share with us a little bit about education ecosystems and how gratitude could be a superpower is what I'm excited about. That was something that really, really came up in a conversation that he was sharing with about his ideas of education. And that was why I was like, I need to have him in this series. So welcome, 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 Alexander. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us.
Thank you so much, Karen. And thank you for what you're doing. I mean, you are being the change we need to see in the world, and you're doing that. So thank you, and thank you for, by doing that, inspiring and bringing us into our power as well. I think this is very much what, this is the kind of education process that we need, that inspires, uplifts, and gives permission for us to be our true selves. Us meaning human beings, all human beings, from children to lifelong learners who, we can be our true selves. I mean, I think this is the greatest power that we have. And often we find ourselves boxed, right? Boxed in, or with the expectations that we perform in one way or another. And I think, the ways in which we can find pathways together to empower, inspire, and provide the platforms for each other to, what people say is actualize, to really be our true potential. I think this is the kind of new paradigm education.
Absolutely. And our intention is to bring compassion, gratitude, kindness, and peace education as a curriculum. And we're working on that. I actually just rolled out a pilot program in my own town. And it was through the lens of music. It was through the lens of understanding. It was through the lens of learning how to have more compassionate conversations and more compassionate communication for the children. And it was incredible to see them really step into their greatness to be the best possible version of themselves. And so I wanted to go into, how do we start to bring these education ecosystems to little small communities like my little town here in Solvang?
Well, let me give you a little bit of background, first of all, as to what I'm doing and how it comes into that framework. So there's this organization called A Network for Grateful Living, and what's neat about, it's like, why is such a long title? But if you abbreviate ANGL, on Network for Grateful Living, it's angel, right? So it's kind of nice. And the framework around living in gratitude, it's not like being grateful all the time. It's a way of being. It's a way of being. And there are so many ways that we can increase our ability to live in gratitude from moment to moment, from mindfulness techniques to meditation techniques to presentation, these kind of techniques, right? So how do we do this together? Because I think, Karen, that truly the best way to live with gratitude and live in ways that self-actualize is through each other. So when we can find ourselves in each other, and when we can create spaces for others where they can learn about life, learn about themselves, learn about each other, without feeling that there's a hidden agenda or that they have to meet somebody else's expectations of what they should be. But they can really express and discover who they are. I think that's really, the essence of education, which is to educare, right, from the Latin, is to draw out from within, right? So it's not pouring into.
Never heard that. I've never heard it that way. That's
Yeah,
beautiful.
yeah. And so in this a network for grateful living, and I'm, by the way, based in Buenos Aires, Argentina. So I'm speaking to you from Argentina right now, where it's winter at the moment. Although it's a beautiful sunny day here, it's still quite crisp and cool. And what we are looking at is, as you said, is education. The evolutionary learning ecosystem is what we're calling it. Evolutionary learning ecosystem. It's an ELE. And we bring it beyond just education. It's a learning ecosystem because it can be formal and informal types of education. It's any context, any place where people can learn more about life. And there are 5 levels. Maybe I can tell you about those in a moment. But I wanted to just pick up on the themes that you mentioned in terms of music and in terms of gardening. Because I tell you, the metaphor that we use is really interesting, as we were talking about gardening a little earlier. But the metaphor that we use when we're talking about how do we bring about this evolution learning ecosystem is about being gardeners of an ecosystem. Right? So really, the people who I'm working with, and I have a team of people here in Argentina, and we're connected both nationally and internationally to other organizations. We're exploring how can we create these connections between these learning initiatives, connections that create contexts for and support each other. A lot of education these days, Karen, is in these institutions, any kind of institution, whether it's a college or whether it is a school or whether it's a kindergarten, and they're kind of like little feudal domains. They have their own, the people who come there, they're the students, right? The parents, then they have the administration, and they have the building, and that's it. That's their, almost like their domain. And they connect with the community, of course, but still they have to find all the resources themselves to compete against other institutions that are like them. And it's really pretty feudal. Imagine if they were to connect with each other and to support each other and to create a community of offerings, right? So this is what the idea of the evolutionary learning ecosystem is fundamentally about. And the idea of being the ecosystem gardener means that we're not there to engineer this ecosystem, but we're there to see who's doing what and how can we create the synergies, the ways in which one community supports and is supported by what is being done in other communities. And this has a lot to do with music as well.
Yeah, like a symphony.
It really is. It really is. And in a way, it's actually more like, the way I feel, it's more like an improvisational jazz ensemble, because there is no score that's pre-written. We're exploring where we're taking this together. But clearly, the kind of melodies is something that we're listening into, because it all has to do with what kind of world do we want to live in? What kind of, I talk about the glocal, which is globally informed and locally relevant. So the global,
Yes.
right?
This is exactly what Kindness Changes Everything. That's exactly what my program is. It's global education for a small town to learn how to take this global education and expand it into their local community to grow kindness and unity, and to become, like you said, an ecosystem of support. Like I'm going to be on the board and the organization for our botanic garden. So we'll be bringing out field trips, and I have everything in alignment with the standards that the school has to go by, so that they will be actually getting the education that they need, but also they'll be able to go out into nature, and they'll be able to experience getting their hands and being a part of that ecosystem. So I love that you are doing that in Argentina too.
Indeed. And you think about it, I think maybe those principles of gardening and of harmonizing, the musical component of that, these are really kind of sense abilities, the ability to sense, being sensible in that way. So these are sense abilities that we can bring into these ecosystems as a kind of a part of the culture of these ecosystems, so that there can be a greater ability to respond, a responsibility, responsibility. So you have the sensibility that comes from music and this kind of permaculture kind of gardening, where you're saying, we don't have to grow a monocrop here. We don't have to have the same kind of education institutions, but we're looking at the way in which these institutions complement each other. The basis, Karen, for the evolution learning ecosystem is something called the evolution learning community. And the evolution learning community can be a school, can be a neighborhood, can even be a family. It's a place where people learn how to learn about the dynamics, the harmonies of their living environment. And when they learn about how to be part of that symphony, that expression in their environment, if they can connect with other evolutionary learning communities that are also doing that, then you get a community of communities. And that is an evolution learning ecosystem. I mean, it's not more complicated than that. It really is that. So the question what we're facing here in our project in Argentina is, how do we serve as the gardeners for that to emerge, for that kind of connectivity among these evolution learning communities? Again, they can be a school, it could be a group in a company that says, hey, we're trying to learn about how to recycle in our company and how to make our company more.
It could be our city council. It could be our mayor. Yeah.
Exactly.
We here in Salt, my mayor, who is here in our town, is going to be, we have a big festival that comes here to Solvang, and it's called Danish Days. We have thousands of people who come to our little town here, and my mayor has decided that we are going to dedicate our Danish Days to growing more kindness and unity in our community. We'll be dedicating one of the places where all the events are going to be going on as our Garden of Peace. And we'll be using this time to continue to have these conversations. And I feel like, I'm just a mom who went to the city council meetings and asked to bring kindness programs. I have a nonprofit organization, and I have been, working in the schools for 18 years as a volunteer. I have gone in and created programs. I design board games and musical coloring books, and I try to find as many fun and educational ways to reach the children and really empower them to be kindness and compassion leaders, so that they are really learning how to, as you said, to be a voice for their community and see more unity in their schools and in their families. We had one thing that I really loved was we did a project that I would explain to them that they were going to go home and choose a place in their home that felt really good for them, and that was going to be their peace corner, and that would be their place where they could use the tools that we were giving them, the breathing techniques, the ways that they could still the busyness of their mind, and just be in gratitude to be in that place. And many of the children came back and were so excited to explain that they had never had anything like that before in their house, and that they thought that their mom and dad would like to use it also because they needed a peace corner too. And I thought that was so beautiful. And I talked to them about how important it is to, when we have inner peace for world peace. When we find our own inner peace, it starts to ripple. And when we find that we're being more kind to ourselves, that also we want to be more kind to each other. And we realize that there really is no separation, that we're all having this human experience together. And this is why we want to, really start to engage with the superintendents, with the principals, with the teachers, so that not only the students are getting an education in peace and kindness and, compassion, but that the support is there for the superintendents and for the principals and administration, just like what you're talking about.
So that's exactly it, Karen. What we're looking at is how can we scale this? I mean, imagine taking that principle of having a peace corner, right? And how powerful that is, right? And how powerful, you saw that, how powerful it is for not only the children, but also for their families, right? Within the family, I can have that peace corner, right? Imagine if you bring this to the school. The school has the peace corner. Imagine the superintendents, they have the peace corner. Imagine then if you have a community that has a peace corner. This is what we're looking at. This is the idea of the evolutionary learning ecosystem, is how can we take these kind of principles that work and bring them into scale so that they're also part of the resources for peace and both this inner and outer peace, as you were talking about. Karen, one thing I want to share with you in particular is these 5 levels that we work with in trying to see how this is coherent for the evolution learning communities and then the communities of community. So we talk about this peace at the level of myself as an individual, just like you were saying here, right? So finding this inner peace, being able to have a peace corner, being able to go into ways in which one can connect with ourself in authentic ways, and just really honor our own self and our well-being, our being truly. I think this is one huge part of what we're doing in our project. That's the first level. The second level then takes us from what we call the intrapersonal, which was that first level, to the interpersonal, which is how are we with other people? Do we have that same level of harmonization, talking about that musical frame? Are we in creating melodies together, harmonies together, or is there discord? Are we in strife in some ways? And how can we be aware of that? So how are we, what kind of notes are we generating with others, right? So that's the second level. The third level is with nature. So how are we in harmony with nature? Are we just walking around and stepping on everything and breaking things? Or are we in a flow that honors nature and that allows nature to honor us too, because it's a two-way thing, right? So how are we in a living environment where we notice that this is actually living and alive? And the fourth, because there are 2 more levels, the fourth level is with our ancestors and with our future generations. Because to be able to say, what would my grandparents have thought about this? Would they be smiling at me now? Or my great-grandparents, are they smiling at me? Is this something that is good? And I'm going to be an ancestor. We are actually ancestors in training right now, if you think about it. So how are the future generations, would they be saying, hey, thank you for the way you're being now with the earth, with each other, because you're creating a good story for us to continue. So that's the fourth level. And the fifth level is with the entire universe, with the cosmos. It gets to this level of saying, hey, I'm part of a bigger story. And am I part of that in harmony? Is this big story which actually brings the whole earth into being, and not just the earth, but the solar system and our galaxy? Because we tend to get lost on our earth saying it's just about us. We're part of a much bigger story. And to remember that, and to bring this into all those 5 levels of the personal, the interpersonal, with nature and with our ancestors and future generations, and then with the spirit of the universe. When all of those things are in harmony in our institutions, in our evolutionary learning communities, then they are in harmony with each other as well when we bring them into connection. So this is part of what we're looking to explore and to help generate in the way in which we garden the evolutionary learning ecosystem.
I love it. I love it. You know, I wrote a song called We Are One Song, and it's universe, right? Uni is one, right, and verse is song. We are one song. And really the truth is all of those 5 characters are so intertwined into every bit of our daily life, right? It's, you know, it's an illusion that we're not all in this together, you know? Exactly. And we've been taught on some level to believe that we're separate, and that we, you know, that what we're doing to nature isn't affecting us. But of course it's affecting us. Of course it's affecting us. And you know, more and more people are coming together to say, you know, when I started doing talk shows back in 2014, when I started, you know, bringing out, I had a show called The Globally Good Show, and bringing people into the light so that they could shine their beautiful work out into the world. It was Dr. David Hawkins' Power versus Force that got me out of my comfort zone, realizing that one person who's vibrating with love in their heart, peace on their mind, and kindness in their actions is counterbalancing 750,000 people who are in the low vibrations of bigotry and shame and blame. Those energies are not connected to the source of love. And so when we are being connected to, like you said, we start with ourselves and we bring that in, and then we ripple that out into all of our communities and out into the universe. And then we become the most powerful force on the planet. And that's why I feel that this is, you know, it feels like a divine assignment that you and I are talking right now. It feels like, you know, the ancestors are grateful that we've come into this beautiful biosphere together. And now it's like, oh, this is just going to be a wonderful thing that now it'll just keep expanding. And, you know, I think taking those 5 principles and bring those to the children, and bring those. I would be honored to add that to our Kindness Changes Everything program, because, and maybe I can write a song about it, because that's how I am. Everything comes to me as music. When I'm learning something, I almost always have to hear the music of it to remember, to be able to retain it. And many of the children that I've talked to feel that way too.
Well, it's very powerful, Karen, because, you know, fundamentally, and this is what is being proven now by the studies of field-based physics, for example, and sub-quantum physics. My area is in the system sciences, formally. Yeah. And what we're looking at is what's called subtle connections, right? So we talk about quantum entanglement, but that gets into physics. But subtle connections means that there's a level of, and it truly is a vibrational frame, where we are in some type of alignment. It's consonance. It's more than resonance. Resonance is like when we find ourselves in a way that seems right, feels right. That's a resonance. But consonance is where you consciously perceive that, and you can cultivate it, and you can say, you know what, we're in tune. we're in tune. How can we continue to be in tune? That process of being in tune, tuning, is a big part of these 5 levels, for example, because fundamentally it's about listening into and sensing into. It's not about knowing like rationally only, but it's with your whole being when this is in harmony. And it's not just a good feeling because it's like, wow, it's not, that is life. That is life. And so education that builds on and furthers this way of cultivating life. Janine Benyus, who is the founder of an interesting area called biomimicry, she says life creates conditions conducive to life. Life creates conditions conducive to life. It makes sense. I mean, that's why we have a planet that's full of trees and plants and different kind of animals instead of like bare rock, because it's all the time creates conditions conducive to life. So for me, the big challenge is, how do we learn to do that? How is our species going to do that? And you know what? We can't do it by ourselves. We can only do it together. So this idea of learning communities and of learning with each other, it's a way of being that. I have on my chair here. Let me show you. See this?
Mm-hmm. I love that.
See, it says,
be the systems you want to be in the world.
That's right. And you can also see it says, be you in the world.
Yeah.
Right? Be you in the world.
Right.
Right? And in a small way, it says, the systems want to see. So that's when the system wants to see is like, hey, what's trying to happen here? What is the life that is, when you say life creates conditions conducive to life, what is trying to emerge here? What is that life is reaching for? And when you can listen into that and you see the beauty of the harmonies, then you can become one of the gardener, musician, curators, and foster that emergence. And then when you can help others to do that, that's called education. So for me, this is what it's all about.
Absolutely. That is what it's all about. And thank you so much. This has been an incredible, incredible time for us to be together. And I feel so, so grateful for this experience. Not only is this going to, touch my heart, but it's going to touch so many other hearts. And I just really want to thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and being who you are in the world, and just really radiating that love and light, because we all need to remember this as we inspire and uplift each other, because we are all in this together. And if we could just get that and understand that, and enough of us believe that, that's why I started bringing kindness back, and that's why I'm kind of like a Weird Al Yankovic of kindness. I write songs of kindness and compassion, and I take the lyrics of songs that can be more uplifting and can be more inspiring, because I believe that music is the way that we can awaken our heart, and it's also the way that we connect to each other. And a lot of times there'll be a certain way that a song or even a rhythm will just bring people into that connection. And I just think that, so much that we have available to us on the planet. And if we can work together, that's what it's all about, is what can we do together that we can't do on our own? And, we try to do it on our own. We think we're doing it on our own. And then all of a sudden we realize there's nothing that we can do without each other.
Really. Absolutely. I think, and that's really fundamental, because in the end, in the final analysis, for me, and whatever you want to call the final analysis, we were made for each other. I don't know how you want to put this, but the fact is we were not made to be isolated. This is not what any life is about. Life always reaches out to make connections, and it co-emerges. There's no emergence by yourself. You're always in a context. And when you can do this with others, wow. And when you can do this with others who care, super wow. I mean, that's the potential of our species. When we can do this in a way which isn't just saying, hey, what's in this for me? Or we can do this in a way which says that together we get all these new surprises that we wouldn't even have guessed we were getting if we were trying to only do it for ourselves individually. So I think
Right.
that's really the beauty of this. And you're bringing kindness into this, and you're bringing, I mean, when you're I appreciate your acknowledgments, and it's very nice, and honestly, I appreciate that. And it's because of you and this interaction that I'm showing up in this way. You invite that, you create the conditions. How do we create the conditions for each other? This is a huge part of these evolutionary learning ecosystem gardeners, right? We create the conditions for each other to flourish. And, if there's something else that's more meaningful than that, let me know. But this, I think,
Exactly. Let me know. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Alexander. And everybody, thank you so much for listening. And thank you for sharing this out and for letting all of your communities know that it's time for us to have more kindness and unity in each community. We'll see you soon.